This video is on burnout. So, what burnout actually is based on the scientific and psychological literature, and then how to address it. And I made this video because I feel like burnout is just a term we hear like all the time, everywhere. Everyone's burnt out. Everyone is burning out all the time. Everyone has burnt out. And I don't mean that to like discount anyone. I think plenty of people are struggling. But there's actually a specific term. And so I'm going to draw on kind of a overview that comes from Science Direct, surveying the literature, to examine that there are actually like three specific attributes that come together to define what we call burnout. And then I'll share a model from leading organizational psychologist Adam Grant that you can use as both an individual or as like a leader at your workplace to help prevent and improve burnout. So let's get into it. Now, there are actually three kind of dimensions of burnout, as I mentioned. It's kind of not just, again, this concept of, oh, I'm burnt out or I'm stressed out, and we kind of just throw it around willy-nilly. There are three key dimensions. One is overwhelming exhaustion. The second is feelings of cynicism and detachment, typically in the context of a job or role. And then a sense of ineffectiveness and lack of accomplishment. So we think about this across different sort of axes, right? So the exhaustion component is really like the sort of the stress and almost in some cases physiological dimension of the burnout. So you feel just totally depleted, again, both in terms of your mental and emotional energy, as well as your physical energy in many cases. The cynicism piece, right? That was the second one I talked about, is often called depersonalization. So this has to do more with your motivation and how you're relating to your work or to that role. So it almost means like you're just feeling kind of detached and like you don't even belong there. You don't want to, you're almost like kind of averse to it and you're not really bringing your authentic self to it, which maybe sounds a little cliche, but right, that's kind of the sensation. So first you have this physical, emotional depletion, and then you just have this like feeling of disengagement of like depersonalization. I don't know what I'm doing here. And then the final one is reduced efficacy. So this feels like you can't accomplish anything. This relates to what's called the self-evaluation piece of burnout. So this is feeling like I just, no matter what I do, I can't get the job done, or I can't make an impact, or I don't really have a sense of control. I feel like I'm incompetent and can't get things done and can't be productive. So you see that one of these is kind of a stress dimension. One of them is kind of a motivational, relational dimension. And then finally, one of them is a self-evaluation dimension. And so when you feel depleted, you feel kind of disassociated or depersonalized, and you feel incompetent, those three things together are how you get burnout. So now this leads us to the question of, well, what can you as an individual do to limit or prevent burnout, as well as what can we do as organizations? And I found Adam Grant's tool, again, so both the scientific overview of defining burnout, I'll include down below, as well as this model for addressing it, I'll include down below. But he uses the DCS model, which is demand control support. So demand is making structural changes that kind of lighten the load or the sort of burden of tasks placed on a given person. Control is trying to give people a sense that they have an ability to choose how they do their work. So kind of like autonomy or empowerment, as well as making sure they are skilled enough and have the tools to actually do the work effectively. And then support means, of course, they're connected and have people they can count on. So I'm going to share a couple applications for each of those that you can think about as an individual for your own work, or if you lead people or have a team or something. So demand. What you can do is identify the most depleting and exhausting elements of your role and maybe look for ways to reduce them. So this could be a conversation with your peers, with your coworkers, or potentially with your boss of saying, hey, could I maybe do less of this and more of this? As a leader then, or team leader, it's trying to figure out, what are the tasks or who's taking on what, and maybe being cognizant about who's taking on more of the work or more demanding parts of the work, and seeing if you can either reduce the total burden or distribute it in a more equitable way, or at the very least in a way that is aligned with people's skills and values. Because there may be things that are easy to some people, like if you told me, if I was working in a big company and they're like, hey, Jackson, we need you to film a few videos for our marketing initiative, I'd be like, yeah, I don't care. I'll just get me in front of a camera. Whereas the average person might be like, oh my God, that's terrifying. So what we can see is that there are nuances there, but you as an individual taking an inventory of the demands placed on you, thinking about how you can mitigate some of those. You as a leader taking an inventory of your team about what demands are being placed on people and thinking about how to mitigate some of those. Control. This for you is thinking of ways that you can try to empower yourself. And again, this may be a conversation with your direct supervisor, your manager, or the people around you, is setting your own goals, your own items for development, or even more flexible work arrangements. It's kind of saying like, look, if we're going to define what the outcome is, can I have a little more say in the how of reaching that outcome? Same thing for teams, right? You're trying to set goals and objectives and be clear on the end state, but empower people to achieve those end states in ways that are best for them. This is going to improve people's sense of autonomy. So there you have your personal application, is thinking through how you can control more of how you do your work. And team application, how can you let people have more control over how they do their work? And then finally, support, right? As an individual, for you, this may be just thinking about, hey, who is my group, my people in my workplace? Could I even start some sort of group like an ERG, an employee resource group around a certain interest, or get together with a certain group, or even just making introductions and building some relationships with the people that you work closest with. And then, of course, if you're in a leadership role, is trying to create those same opportunities and vehicles for connection and cohesion for people to support one another. So there you have it. I know I've covered a lot in this video. It was meant to just be a very short, practical, to the point understanding of burnout, and then of course proposing some solutions for preventing burnout. So we covered, right, what it actually means, these sort of 3 dimensions of burnout, and then we talked about how you as an individual or as a group can be happier and more effective at work by considering the DCS model. So looking for ways to reduce or mitigate some of your demands, get more control, and make sure you have that support. And of course, I don't want to be naive, easier said than done, right? But at least now you have some of the principles and best practices to understand how to get after this. So if this video is helpful, here's a video that YouTube suggests you'll like. As always, you can find more science-based tools and insights on this channel to help you be at your very best in work and life. So that's all for now. This has been your Happiness Nerd, Jackson Kirchis. I'll see you next time.